Today's sponsor is Shudder, the premium streaming video service devoted to horror, thrillers, and suspense. Backed by AMC Networks, Shudder has a growing and dynamic selection of thrilling premieres, originals, and exclusives, including Rob Zombie's 31, The Ring vs. The Grudge franchise, Mashup, Sadako vs. Kayoko, and We Are the Flesh, which I still haven't seen, and now I have a reason to watch it, which I'm very excited about. Shudder is also the only place to find legendary BBC film Ghostwatch, now available in the US for the first time ever, which I also need to see, and people have been telling me for years. Somebody even gave me a DVD of it, and I didn't watch it, so all the more bonus for me. Shudder is available on the web, iOS, Android, Chromecast, Apple TV, and Roku for $4.99 a month or $49.99 with an annual membership. But Shockwave's listeners can get a free month by entering promo code SHOCK at checkout. Go to shudder.com today and find the best collection of horror available to stream anywhere. And I also just saw one of the programmers of there while I was in New York, Sam Zimmerman, awesome guy. They make great content.
Guys, welcome to Shockwaves.
This is episode 49. Okay.
Where's Ryan?
We're a man down yet again.
Yeah, Ryan.
We traded Ryan for you, I guess.
Yeah, Ryan, we're ships passing in the night now, guys. Ryan, it's this way for a chunk of convention season, actually. Ryan is now at the Overlook Film Festival in the Pacific Northwest.
All right, let's be honest. Ryan has gone to the Middle East to find a sculptor, somebody willing to sculpt a fake rondo because he feels so left out.
I feel pretty bummed about that.
We're runner-up.
Okay.
Take it.
Two things.
It that we're runner-up.
Two good things. For one, thank you all for your voting or not voting, whatever you did.
Because I'm ecstatic that we're runner-up, which means that people actually did vote for us, and that is freaking awesome.
We are runner-up to one of our cinematic heroes in our lives, Joe Dante. But we're also runner-up to something that isn't even a podcast. and we were the runner-up, which means we are still the horror podcast. So I think there's a lot of good juju to take from that because they are not, it's a weird category. Multimedia is very strange.
Yeah, because it's multimedia website, which is weird because Shockwaves obviously isn't a website, but neither is Trailers from Hell for that matter.
Yeah. Well, I guess it's a website. You go to it on the web. But
it's
content.
videos.
Yeah, it's content.
Videos.
It's amazing content too, like one of my favorite sites.
I know. I love that one. If I'm going to lose to someone, I think that Trailers from Hell, Joe Dante is who I would pick, but still.
But we still need to win one for Ryan one day.
Ryan is never going to get his rondo.
He deserves it.
And
he deserves to be a monster kid.
Yeah.
The website was also a runner-up, which warms my heart.
Blumhouse.com.
Thank you so much,
I won't
guys.
ask who won.
Beat by Bloody
I'm
Disgusting.
not going to ask who. Bloody.
Yeah.
Okay.
Listen, the saving grace of Bloody Disgusting. Well, saving grace is not the appropriate term. John Squires, I've always loved what he's done. Freddy in Space, and he did a lot of stuff for us. I think he's doing a really great job over there.
Oh my God, I've been loving his content. John is just amazing wherever he goes. I'm sad we no longer have him at Blumhouse.com, but I'm thrilled that he's keeping up the good stuff.
Yeah, smartest thing they did was get John on board. So that's that. Here's the deal. This is episode 49. So next week, we're holding off on episode 50 because we want Texas Frightmare to be episode 50.
It's going to be awesome.
So we will be there in Dallas, Texas from May 5th to the 7th. But there won't be too much of a break. We're going to try to squeeze in a few bonus episodes while we're gone. So that way it should be this episode 49, a couple of bonus things, and then we will air 50 about a week after Texas Frightmare is wrapped. Mm-hmm. We're going to do it live in front of an audience, but we will tape stuff. We'll try to get some little mini interviews if we can. We're going to see, it's pretty crazy once we get there and settle. We're not really sure. It's very unpredictable what we'll be able to do.
We do this every year where we're like, we should plan out the interviews in advance. And then we start reaching out to the celebrities and all they ever say is, yeah, just come by my booth. And then we will show up at the booth. There will be a line going out the door. And then we're like, hi, can we get that interview now?
Yeah,
we try to improvise.
Yeah.
Well, it's the kind of place you aim for Argento and you settle for drinking. And that's just Texas.
And that's fair enough.
So when you get a bonus episode that's all of us in a hotel room drinking and playing Cards of Humanity at 3 a.m., that's what you get.
You've been warned. That might be episode 50.
Distinctly could be episode 50.
Yeah.
But it'll be awesome.
In a sense, we're lucky. You guys are lucky we didn't win the award because last time we won the award, what happened, Rob? That was the end of our show, the next episode.
Yeah, we quit the next episode.
And you all had to suffer for 24 hours of thinking we were gone.
A whole 24, yeah.
So, this way we're going to have to keep going for another year at least.
Going.
Yeah. Got no choice now.
Yeah.
All righty.
But we, while we're talking about the convention really quick, since this is technically our last true episode before the convention, I do want to say we are doing a ton of panels while we're at Texas Frightmare. We have a booth for Blumhouse.com and Shockwaves. We will also be selling some of our own stuff there as well. I'll be selling the Hellraiser comic. Rob's going to have a Psycho doc.
I'll be selling yellow handkerchiefs for your front pocket. You have to see.
Is that a cruising reference?
Yes. I love you for getting that reference. Hey, Al Pacino's birthday yesterday.
I lived above the bar where they shot that.
I think I've heard that story after 4 years with you online.
I think I know all your stories, Elric.
Pretty much.
Yeah. But yeah, so we're going to be there. We have a ton of panels. Please come check us. I even just got another panel today. I'm now doing the Puppet Master remake panel, guys.
Holy crap.
Whoa.
Yeah. Excuse me. So it's going to be crazy fun. And we have Blumhouse.com stickers that we're going to have at the booth as well. So come see us for Texas Frightmare. Fucking be there.
Yeah, and don't hesitate. Look, I was in New York this week, and I was just telling these guys, but this was pretty phenomenal. So if you're somebody I met on this trip, it kind of blew my mind. So I'm on the East Coast. I fit in a lot of movies while I was there. I was there partially for Tribeca, but I was also just going to movie theaters at Drafthouse in Brooklyn, Drafthouse in Yonkers, a couple other places. I went to 5 different movie venues across the city, and in 4 of those, somebody ran up to me saying they were a Shockwaves fan. One of them, somebody bought me a beer who didn't, recognize me from the back at the front, didn't even see my face. Somehow they just knew it was me, sent it back. So to get that kind of
aroma.
As the aroma
you
of
smell
Kane,
like
the
Elric.
Kane aroma. But to get that kind of to have people who are the kind of, I hate to say this is the kind of listeners you want, but people who are really loving movies. One guy was one of the people running the Drafthouse in Brooklyn. Sorry, I've lost some name. One guy was Matt Barone, who runs the Brooklyn Horror Film Festival.
Wow.
He was doing the Q&As at the Tribeca, both screenings I went to, and straight away me and him started talking because he just is one of those guys who's always active on our on Twitter and everything. So it was super cool.
And you get to hang out with Gang.
Yes, and I'd never met Gingold, and he was at the Abbey screening in the middle of nowhere. Like, we're an hour out in New York City, so I didn't expect that to happen.
I can't believe you went to New York City to see Abbey.
Well, that wasn't why, but actually,
that was the main reason.
I think that's a good reason to
motivating
go.
Factor.
It's really worth a cross-country trip.
So anyway, I just want to thank all those people who came up to me and what I want to say is, like, at Texas, come up to us, man, because it is such a thrill for us. Yeah. Don't like hype back and they don't want to meet me because they're just whatever. No, for us, this is like crazy. We're web celebrities. Come on. That's nothing. Like, that's like probably below politicians. So, please come up to us, make us feel good.
Wow.
But I might as well jump into Abbey just because me and Rob saw this.
Tell us about New York. And it's probably the same print because I think there's only one.
Here's the interesting thing. It was advertised as a major kind of a restoration 2K scan by AGFA, so the American Genre Film Archive. So my co-writer, my friend who I was out there staying with, he had never seen it, so he was excited. And we go to it. I swear to God, I kind of looked exactly like that 16mm print, maybe a touch below. And I was like, whoa, if this is the 2K scan and a restoration, think how bad all the copies of this film must be. Like, and it's still awesome. So, like, AGFA does the awesomest work. But, like, I was watching it going, whoa, usually when you see, like, I'm going to go see a DCP, it usually looks pristine. This literally looks like watching the 16mm print.
Wow.
Now, is there a DVD of Abbey? Because I have a bootleg.
There's a bad, like, not a correct one, and it's bad.
Maybe it isn't a bootleg. Maybe I have the original. What I have was so dark and grainy that it's painful to watch.
Yeah, I mean, it's dark and grainy. I mean, I don't, what's weird? When we saw it on 16mm, my feeling, I never once felt, oh man, this film looks all messed up.
No, that was a really good 16mm print, and I was of the understanding that that's like the one. I think somebody on our group had claimed that it was theirs. Right. So that's the one they should be scanning, is the one we got to see at the same time.
The quick cut of what that is if you haven't seen it, and I've talked about it obviously on this show a long time ago and on Pure Cinema recently for the ripoffs, but Abbey is really it's a really entertaining William Girdler film, part of the ripoff cycle, but this is one that made a lot of money very quickly. I think it made $4 million in a couple weeks on its release because of the drive-ins and the popularity of Exorcist, until the people who put out Exorcist realized they got it pulled. It's one of the few lawsuits that actually stuck. A lot of these kind of grindhouse movies actually snuck under the radar and kind of would get away with it. This one didn't. Girdler never saw any of those profits. And, I think while still a lawsuit going for the profits, by the time he had actually passed away. So anyway, but it's an amazing film, and it really holds up. You know what, though? The crowd we saw it with was one of the most entertaining screenings of my life. This crowd hardly made any sound. It was very quiet. So I was watching it almost like as a good movie instead of a crazy movie, and it still kind of held up like, oh, this is pretty interesting. Like the fact that this guy is making this movie with this all-black cast that's very regional, and the dialogue, and like he kind of subverts certain stereotypes and dives into others and makes it just like work. It's a truly fascinating film. And I would assume that AGFA will be putting out, I would assume, a DVD of this scan, if this is as good as it's ever going to get, if the legality side of it's washed up. But man, it's a fun movie. And it's just, it's just seeing it with a crowd. You're always you're curious which lines, but as soon as it goes full motherfuckers, it becomes such an amazing movie when it like kind of makes that turn. So that was cool. I was off the plane. There's a few I just resaw, so I want to just like scan over those. I wouldn't go, and then we can kind of round table it. When I first got off the train, I got off the plane. I'd been in New York for an hour and a half, and somebody texted me, "Hey, did you know Blue Velvet's playing in 35 millimeter, like 30 blocks from you? And Greta Gerwig has never seen the movie. And the whole point of the screening cycle is celebrities come to see a movie that they somehow missed in their life." So it was Greta Gerwig and her husband Noah Baumbach who made Squid and the Whale and a whole bunch of other movies.
What theater was this at?
It was a new film called, it was one that's been there forever called The Quad, but it only got reopened. So it got a big refurbish. I don't want to throw anyone on the bus, but the entire film was basically soft focus. And I was the only one afterwards who was kind of like, what the fuck? Like, I was so into the movie, I didn't want to complain. But afterwards, I'm like, how did that happen? Like, you guys have this big reopening, and I'm watching a soft focus version, and they were just like, oh, the lenses and everything's DCP now. So it was 35 mil, and we didn't, stuff was off. And I'm like, yeah, you should probably fucking give me my money back. And no one even offered. And I was like, come on, guys. Like, so because I loved the movie so much, I was just like, you know what? It's all good, man. I'm just going to walk the streets of New York, and I let it go. Besides, throwing you under the bus on this podcast. So,
should have given him his money back.
But it was kind of cool to watch somebody who, Greta Gerwig's becoming, a pretty major actress now. For horror fans, she's famous for having her face blown the fuck off by a certain A.J. Bowen in A Certain House of the Devil.
Oh, yeah.
Let me just put it this way. She is not the babysitter, for all those who don't know who Greta Gerwig is. Anyway, that was super entertaining, and I still think Frank Booth has the best character introduction of anyone in any movie ever. It's just like the best. A couple other ones I rewatched High Tension, and I've never talked about that on the show because the first time I saw High Tension was in theaters, and it has the weirdest thing. I don't know if I'd like to know what copy you have, but this film starts off with the French actresses speaking English. And then as soon as the villain comes in, he is subtitled for half the movie, and the family's subtitled, and you're like, it's the most schizophrenic, like, audio job I've ever seen because it's bad English. So it's not like they were naturally English speakers, and it makes no sense, the whole dubbing situation. I don't think I've ever seen a film that's half English, half subtitles, but for no good reason.
I've only seen it in French with subtitles, and I know it was dubbed for America,
and
but
not the whole thing's dubbed. That's the weird thing.
That's weird.
Sure
and this was on Shudder, I think.
Yeah, I've only seen it with
up.
full subtitles when it first came out.
But the film, on a visceral aesthetic level, still really just completely holds up. The first 30 minutes are just unbelievable filmmaking. The tension you feel, then, and I'm not going to ruin it because if anyone wants to see this movie, hasn't seen it, there's a huge twist, very, fairly radical and polarizing twist. And what I was interested about seeing, I saw it with somebody who hadn't seen it before, so his viewing is totally different. He's just taking it in. My viewing the second time was like, okay, 10 years, I've seen this 10 years apart now. I'm watching this film purely thinking about the twist and how it plays out on these story things, and it's complete horseshit. I mean, really, I wanted to try to, there's a couple moments where I'm like, oh yeah, no, I can justify this, and then at a certain point, like, no, it's just been done to be a twist. And I know that came from the Fifth Element. What's the Luc Besson? Mm-hmm. That was Luc Besson's story note that he forced on them early on. So they had a slasher script, and and Aja went with it and made it work. It wasn't like a note after they'd filmed, but it just, I'd be very curious. This could be a good shocker if you're aware of our shocker fan club, or what are they called, the movie club?
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
This would be a good discussion in there for how people feel about it, because it's one of those movies that I've never met someone who's kind of like on the fence about it. You kind of fall one way or other. But you can't deny Aja's filmmaking. It's such a great debut, on an international film. But ton more stuff, but we can swing around.
I saw the Transfiguration.
Oh yeah, I was interested.
Yeah, I moderated the Q&A at the New Art screening this weekend, and the director was there, and one of the producers, and one of the actors too. The crowd loved it, like absolutely thought it was fantastic. I will say, if you're a horror fan and you've seen every horror film ever made, you're going to watch it and go, "Oh, it's Martin." And yeah, it is. It's about a boy who truly believes he is a vampire, and he is killing people, but he's not like supernatural, no teeth, no, he can't fly or anything. He's just a normal dude who believes he's a vampire. And so, but he feels bad about what he's doing. And then he falls in love and meets I can't say he falls in love. He meets a girl, and he definitely gets interested in her. And that just kind of makes him realize how bad the things he's doing are, and he wants to be normal, but he can't. There is a lot of heavy social stuff thrown into this movie. So much so that was like the one critique I heard was like, man, it felt like he just threw in everything. There's suicide. For some reason, the girl like has sex with 5 guys at the very start of the movie. His brother has PTSD. There's obviously some poverty issues. They're living in New York City. There's child abuse. So it really feels like a lot has been thrown into this movie, and it's heavy. But that said, like it got some moments to it. Like there was some really good stuff to it. Some people were saying, oh my God, this is going to redefine the vampire genre. I don't know if it's going to do that. Because it's something that we have seen.
I was wondering
before.
if there's people have ever seen vampires.
I know.
It's like,
Twilight redefined.
This is a redefining movie, and it's like, but have you seen Martin?
Or
No.
Habit,
No.
or The Addiction,
or Let the Right One In.
It definitely feels like Habit, especially because it is. Whereas Martin was set in inner city Philadelphia, this is set in inner city. It's New York City, like a lot of it's New York City, but they filmed most of it in Rockaway. And so, I mean, it's very inner city. Like you're staring at buildings and people walking past and kids on the street running around. And it takes place in like project housing. So, yeah, it's very much, it feels in the vein of Habit, Martin, these kind of vampires in inner city. And it's that whole psychological, well, is he a vampire? Well, does it matter? He's killing people. So in that regard, it's because you're following him, it definitely has kind of a Henry Portrait of a Serial Killer vibe as well.
Okay.
So.
Yeah,
It looks up our alley.
Yeah, I want to see it.
You guys, I will say, Dave came with me, and he was like in love with it, but he'd never seen Martin before. But I was like, there were parts of it that I was like, oh my God. And I do have to say, the cinematography is gorgeous. The person who shot it, because it's all concrete buildings, but they feel alive, and there's like this crazy depth of field with the city. So even though it's generally like an ugly kind of flat environment, it's beautiful on screen.
Is this a mid-range indie, or is this like it's above a battery kind of budget?
Oh, way above. This is like I'd say 2 to 3 million, I'm guessing.
Oh, okay, so a bigger movie.
Yeah, it was definitely
Looks much smaller than that.
I only saw photos, so I thought.
And they announced in the Q&A that that a lot of like the New York City shots were stolen, and that they ended up stealing a bunch of shots, like a lot of the outside stuff. So but I think it was
indie
around
or studio.
Indie.
Oh,
Yeah.
I'm gonna guess 2 to 3 million. I'm gonna look it up right now, though. I'm intrigued
all right,
myself.
I'm going to predict it's 350,000 because that's what you can make look 2 to 3.
For me, I had a stack of stuff that I bought at Monsterpalooza from both Vinegar Syndrome and Severin Films. So I
haven't even touched my sack yet.
I know. I've been slowly making my way through it. I grabbed another one from Vinegar Syndrome called Psychic Killer.
Ooh.
And this is from 1975. It was directed by Ray Danton, who was primarily known as an actor. I'm not very familiar, but I watched some of the special features and then looked it up after. And this was his segue into directing. And this movie is as crazy and wonderful as Vinegar Syndrome titles tend to promise. Basically, it's a guy who gets falsely accused of murder in the opening. And not only accused of murder, but then put in a mental institution. And then he meets another inmate at the mental institution who is basically like, he has like this pennant around his neck, and he's like, tonight I'm going to take out the guy that put me here. He's like, and then I'm just going to kill myself. And you're just like, okay. And he's like, but if you want, I'll pass it on to you. So basically that's kind of what happens. And then he passes off this pennant to the guy. And of course, the moment that happens, he gets cleared of all charges. Like, oh yeah, you didn't murder anybody and you're not crazy. So you can leave the institute now. So he gets out. And apparently what this this pennant does is when you fall asleep, you can astral project yourself out of your body. And so one by one, he goes after, the people that were on the jury and like the judge and like anyone involved with him getting accused of murder, he kind of goes after. And there's some pretty ridiculous, there's another shower murder in there that I thought was pretty fantastic. It's like every Vinegar Syndrome movie has a shower murder that I've been watching. So there's that. And, to remind me of Patrick a little bit, except, Patrick is always comatose through the whole thing, whereas this guy has to physically go to sleep to do it. And what's great is there's kind of a little, it's worth it for kind of the fucked up ending because basically there's a detective that kind of figures out that this guy has to be, he's like, well, this is the motive is, this guy got put to jail and these are the people that are dying. And basically the main guy that does the astral projection is just gloating about it. It's almost like, well, you can't prove it. So they're both like total dicks to each other. And I don't want to give it away, but basically what the detective does is one of it's like the opposite of heroic. It's like the worst. It's pretty fucked up. I'll just put it to you that way. But I was fascinated by it and had a really good time.
It has a good cover, I remember.
Great cover. Yeah. And I really enjoyed it. I think you're going to really get a kick out of how batshit it gets.
And we'll post the photo, but if you actually remember Trump's inauguration, you can see him wearing the pendant, which is awesome. That's how you become president, that pendant. Yeah. One thing I like doing when I was in New York is I like to try to see a couple New York films. I like to try to see one maybe I haven't seen. I'd been meaning to see Inferno again. And I just done that Suspiria episode on that one show. So I was like, okay, cool. We're about to meet Dario, And Inferno, I always thought was gorgeous, but I hadn't watched it. I had never seen the Blu-ray of it. I saw a 35 millimeter print. And, it's New York on quote marks. There's probably 3 shots taken in New York, right. But it's set in New York. You know what? The thing is, this film really is completely a worthy sequel to Suspiria, but there's one clear difference. And I never could put my finger on it till watching it this time. And the difference is no Jessica Harper and double down from that, no protagonist. And so it's got all the most beautiful set pieces, and every episodic sequence is as good almost as Suspiria. It's just short because of the Goblin as well.
I can enlighten you on a lot of this
because
I worked on the Blu-ray.
Oh, cool. But the idea of not having, you're experiencing a Suspiria, so you're experiencing the surreal fairy tale nightmare through Jessica Harper, and when you remove her in this film, you're with the sister for the opening, and then it moves to a friend character of the guy. Then suddenly Lee McCluskey's the guy,
yes.
And you're following him for a while, but then he's off screen for the next 40 minutes, and then he only comes back at the end. So it's got this fractured, almost like a Robert Altman version of an Argento film.
Okay,
and I know Argento was sick through parts of it. I don't know if that has much to
okay. I'll give you the abbreviated version of this as much as possible, because for the Blue Underground Blu-ray, I was watching. Yeah, I was fortunate enough to, and this will come into play a little bit later in our episode, just because we're going to be talking about special features with our guests. But basically, I got to do the interview with both Lee McCluskey and Irene Miracle, who are the brother sister of this film, both in the same day. And it was one of those weird magical experiences where you're just like, you didn't expect your day to turn out that way. And both of them were really frank and candid. And they both had the complete opposite reaction to Argento, which is Lee got along with him really well. Irene did not.
Yeah.
And basically the main thing was, and she talks about this on camera. And what was great about this was this, that she was being very careful what she said. We started the interview. It was me and Buzz Wallach, and she's being very careful about what she was saying, doing the usual spiel. And for whatever reason, we had a problem with our camera. And Buzz was like, I'm so sorry. Do you mind if I just, charge and switch out this tape, whatever, 15 minutes? And in that 15 minutes, she's like, well, do you guys want a cup of tea? Or, so we sat, and she's like, I'll be honest with you, I really did not have a good time in this movie, and I really didn't get along with Dario at all. And she started telling us stories, and I was like, you have to tell this on camera. Like, you have to.
Yeah.
She's like, that's what people want to hear, is you have to be honest about it. So if we had not had that glitch, I don't know if we would have gotten the great interview we got. And basically what happened was Argento cast her, everything was fine, and then right before they started shooting, she started losing all her hair, and she didn't know what it was. She thought she had some weird fucked up disease. And basically Argento was in the process of getting a divorce, had just found out that he had contracted a disease, and basically not in a good mood to begin with, and was convinced that he's like, this actress I hired, now she's going to die while I'm making this movie.
Oh my gosh.
So last minute, he rewrote and tried to get her out of the movie as quickly as possible, and was kind of a shit to her because he didn't think she was going to survive the shoot anyway. And it turned out it was a very common, she eventually, they were able to pinpoint what it was. And, she got over it, all her hair fell out and then it grew back in once she got over this sickness. But so she had a terrible time. And the underwater sequence, she said Lamberto Bava directed it all.
Yeah.
Like, he's like, Dario wouldn't even talk to me. He was throwing chairs through windows, fighting his wife. So I barely worked with him. It was Bava that worked with me.
That's like the total magic of movies, how a movie can come together and seem like it makes sense.
Yeah.
Given that behind the scenes,
magic.
people are, because I know Bill Lustig was like a PA or an assistant director on that one for the New York stuff because he was about to do Maniac and Lamberto Bava, and then Mario Bava comes in to help with these crazy effect sequences at the end, which are literally as close to like cinema magic. Like there's some of my favorite moments, but I really think that despite all that, and especially the underwater scenes are a gorgeous way to start, it really is almost equal, but it's just because you don't have someone to experience the movie. There's no emotional connection.
Right.
So, but it has the beauty, and it definitely makes you wonder, and I'm going to revisit Mother of Tears next because it makes me wonder, like, okay, it's one thing. Mother of Tears to me had like one really good scene, but it makes you wonder, why didn't you try to at least replicate the style of the other two?
The colors.
I don't know why you
like
even made this movie if you weren't doing that.
Yeah.
And so that's something I'd love to ask Argento, not on record, just to ask. I heard from his perspective, Inferno was the hardest movie he ever made. In that little interview, I think it's on there.
Yeah.
And he doesn't specify why. So it could be the personal, but it could also be at a certain point putting the style. I know that the sets get really hot from reading about Suspiria. Like it's very dangerous for the actors because there's so much light being pumped into these sets. So who knows? Maybe it's just too physically demanding.
Yeah.
I'd love to know.
You should watch those interviews. If
I watched the one with the woman. I didn't watch the Lee McCluskey.
Oh, Lee's amazing because he's like this crazy artist too.
He's from Dallas, right? Like he's from the TV show Dallas.
And he was in Just One of the Guys and a bunch of stuff. But with him, he didn't. Neither of them could speak to each other because he didn't speak Italian. So his brother translated, but he tells a great story about like they're like, okay, Lee, we need you. At the end when the whole thing's in fire, like we need you to run through flames, and he's like, I'm a young guy, and I'm like, how dangerous could it be? And he's like, I wasn't acting. And he's like, I could feel the flames behind me, and it's just like I'm trying not to die. Well, it is, but it's great. It's great.
Yeah, I mean, seriously, if you watch Suspiria recently, if you're not waiting for, of course, the beautiful Synapse one we'll get one day, you jump into Inferno. It's really gorgeous, and the cool thing about it, and this is actually maybe the main argument, maybe you didn't need a Mother of Tears because actually Mother Tenebraeum is a big part of Inferno. They go to that storyline like 2 or 3 times and actually show her quite a lot, and those parts are gorgeous in Italy. So it's almost, in a way, it almost felt like that is almost a self-contained trilogy.
Yeah, they definitely included the 3 mothers by the end of it. You knew exactly
that's the
who
mythos
it was
in
be.
this one,
So to circle back on Transfiguration, I couldn't find the exact budgets, but most of the things that I'm finding like fans talking about it are saying under $1 million. Some are saying like 750 to 500,000. So, which actually sounds right now, knowing that all of the shots that I'm thinking like, oh my God, that must have, cost $1 million are all these outside shots of New York City, which we now know were stolen.
So
it'll
be 350 grand.
So yeah,
sticking with that number.
350,000. That actually does not sound that far off, knowing that, it's 3 actors and most of them were shot in an apartment.
I mean, I would have thought Eyes of My Mother looks like almost expensive in a way, but it's not. You know what I mean?
Yeah, and then
just looks good.
Other movies, like I thought that It Follows had to be kind of on the cheap side, and that one was
expensive.
like $7 million.
No, I think it was like 2 or something, 2.5. Well, I don't know. It was definitely
It was a couple million. Yeah.
The other New York one I hadn't seen. I really think you got to get. If you haven't seen this, I thought I'd seen all of Ferrera's like key period movies, but I realized I'd never seen Fear City, and this is the sleaziest of all his New York films.
Oh my gosh! Okay, yeah, I watched this one in New York as well.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
Okay, if you like, and I know you do, Rob, and I know most of our listeners love, and if you haven't seen it, jump out. 10 to Midnight, classic, brilliant. This is very much like a sister film to 10 to Midnight. Basically, I would pitch it to you like this. Young, hot Tom Berenger versus a martial arts slasher on the streets of New York City and the backdrop, peak Melanie Griffith, nude, dancing on a pole for the whole movie. Because she's a stripper at the strip club that these guys basically provide girls to, Tom Berenger. Then all the girls in this town are being slashed up by some weird puritanical martial arts guy who believes only perfect things can go in his body. It makes no sense. There's no backstory to him. And it ends with literally Tom Berenger, who's an ex-prize fighting boxer, in the streets going toe-to-toe with the slasher killer. And in between, it's just the sleaziest New York movie. And if that wasn't enough, Lando Calrissian as the main cop of the movie, yelling, barking orders at them like just a crazy man.
Now, this one has a nice Blu-ray via Shout Factory
Yes,
that
and that's what I was watching.
Which is nice. But I actually, I saw like an Abel Ferreira screening in New York City when I was living there, and this was one of the ones that they screamed. But yeah, it's a fun film.
It's a crazy movie. So it's hard for me to even believe, because I think King of New York is a fucking masterpiece, like Criterion Collection masterpiece type thing. And it's hard to believe that this director is the same human making these movies, because this is just so ridiculous in a way. But it's also like so, like if you're like, when I go to New York, I always just kind of, I'm a little sad that the New York when I was like, 13 just doesn't exist.
You mean it's nice and clean now?
It's just so boring. It's just like there's no weird place to put a quarter in and watch a naked girl
there.
with a weird.
Because this is when people ask me the difference between, and they are, honey, they're just on 9th Avenue.
I know, but
they're
I can't
like
go that far.
9th and 48. That's where you get the peep shows still. But when people ask me the difference between living in Los Angeles and living in New York, I say in New York, I would not have even hesitated to go out at 2 a.m. and walk to the drugstore to buy Tylenol.
Everyone's awake.
Everyone's awake. It's totally safe now. I felt so safe living in my neighborhood in New York. I never even thought twice. You could not fucking pay me to go walk around my neighborhood in LA at 2 a.m. And
yeah. Well, you couldn't pay you to walk.
Exactly.
In LA, no
Who
one's
the
walking.
hell walks here? And I mean, I live blocks from a CVS. I would never walk there.
But if you're looking for that seedy side, this is a perfect one to drop into, because it's just, I feel like it paints the picture a bit better than like Miss 45 and Bad Lieutenant in terms of like the streets of New York. It's just a lot of fun to look at.
Well, speaking of New York, I'll go to this one. So I rewatched Brain Damage because I'm trying to prepare because we're doing all those panels and we get to Texas Frightmare, so I have to watch 31 at some point too.
Did they give you the Blu-ray already, or is this
no?
Something else?
I'm watching like my shitty old DVD. It's actually not that bad of a DVD version, but I'm assuming that the Blu-ray is going to be nice and fancy.
Elmer
with an A, who's actually voiced by Zachary.
Yeah.
So yeah, I just have always loved this film. I'm so excited to do the Henenlotter panel just because his films, and they're all so mature and sexualized, but for some reason I loved them when I was a kid. Like, these were ones that I was watching around the same time as like Return of the Living Dead and Ghoulies and things like that. And so Brain Damage, Basket Case, Frankenhooker. I mean, that was like my trilogy right there. And so revisiting Brain Damage, it's just like, it's just like comfort food for me. It's so neon. It's so 1980s. And it kind of makes me sad that Henenlotter has not gone on to do a bunch of other stuff. Like, I wish he had kept going. And
I never saw Bad Biology. That was later.
Okay.
Yeah, it's okay. It's very different though, because he co-wrote it with the R.A. Rugged Man, the rapper, who like did the tour with him on the like Basket Case bonus features.
Weird.
And it's cool, but it almost has it has both their voices very much. Like even the dialogue and the narration is very it kind of rhymes. It's very rap oriented.
Okay.
So it's weird.
It looked almost trauma-ish to me when I saw the trailer, and that warned me off at the time.
It has a trauma feel. And it's weird
stuff.
because, and Rob and I were talking about this in the office today, about how some of the films from the 80s, just because they were shot on film, and even though that they were low budget as shit, they still have like a really good production value to them. And though when you're looking at something like Brain Damage or Basket Case, these are gritty, smaller horror films, but they still feel like they've got this crazy production value. So I'm watching Brain Damage and there's like club scenes and crowd scenes and the effects are amazing. And there's all this neon and there's like deliberate lighting and things like that.
Yeah.
And so it still just feels like a huge scope to me.
And it's a pretty trippy head trip of a movie, too.
Oh,
like,
yeah.
Just some of the
I think it could be, I mean, like I love Frankenhooker. I think that's probably my favorite, but I think Brain Damage in terms of filmmaking craft is the best thing he's made.
Yeah.
Because there's sequences in there, like, because obviously the guy has a parasite that kind of injects, hallucinogens into his brain. So I remember there's one beautiful sequence where he's kind of like drugged out on the bed staring up at the light, and the light turns into an eyeball, and then the whole room fills with like blue water. Yeah. And it's like one of the most beautifully...
It's gorgeous.
And I think, like, how did he do that? Like, it's one of those sequences
it doesn't feel like an indie film,
I don't know how the hell he pulled that off at this time period. So it's beautiful.
I mean, I'm looking forward to Blu-ray of that. That's why I'm holding out to. I mean, you have to watch it.
And it's shot like a noir film where everything's very dark and kind of has a sheen to it, but it's all got this 80s neon that streams through the whole thing. Yeah, it was just, even on my old DVD, it's kind of a visual feast, which is weird because you don't think of, at least prior to rewatching this, I don't think of Henenlotter as like, oh my God, his visuals. But really, it's there. And the use of the song, I mean, he obviously did have some type of budget because that Glenn Miller song, Elmer's Tune, you know, he sings it throughout and it's just so effective.
I also love Elmer's voice.
Yeah,
like,
Zachary is just how
like,
you doing, buddy?
Yeah, you expect it to be like kind of like a weird little demon thing or whatever. And he's just like, hey.
Which they also do in a Frankenhooker,
Yeah.
you know? They kind of go play against type by making her kind of an airhead, you know?
Yeah.
Right.
It's such a, he's such a fun film. And we'll get that. Blu-ray will be out for this weekend.
For
so
Texas Fright Night.
that'll be the
I'll buy
first
it
thing
there,
I'll spend money on.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
So I highly recommend checking out Brain Damage if you haven't seen it in a while. And if you haven't seen it yet, it's
Wait for the arrow, yeah.
Yeah, wait for the arrow, but it's like a must for all horror fans.
I agree.
Alrighty, my buddy Josh Miller came over the weekend, and he had obtained a somewhat long lost VHS classic. He got a DVD of it at Monsterpalooza called Demon Wind.
I was,
Oh my gosh.
This amazing
Yeah,
cover.
I almost bought it just for the
best
cover.
or the best tagline ever, right?
There's something deadly in the air.
Yes.
It'll blow you away.
Nice.
Okay. This is funny because I was convinced this was an 80s movie, but it's 1990, so I guess technically we could say it's 80s.
Was the cover
Yes.
Okay,
Lenticular, yeah.
lenticular. That's what I remember. It
Now,
was like a lenticular cover.
I wish this awesome demon was in the movie. That's on the cover. And actually, it was really funny. Me and Josh got in a debate. Like, you know what? We should remake this and put the cover demon in the movie.
I think there's
we should do a whole series of remakes of movies where we actually deliver on the promise.
I think it's called Demonoid was the other one from earlier this year.
Oh, yeah.
And that was like the best poster ever. And that is
It's
not the movie.
Not in the movie.
Well,
the movie.
now there's a similar demon, but just not this awesome demon that's in the movie. So here's the fun thing about this movie, because it's not good. Let's just get that out of the way.
Yeah.
But we thoroughly enjoyed watching it together. It was written and directed by a guy named Charles Philip Moore. And basically it starts, the reason I like it is because it is a demons movie, and we don't have a lot of those. Like, obviously there's the Baba Demons movies, but like, I like demons like as like a monster that, you know, people transform into them sort of deal. But so the opening, I took notes. The opening is pretty kick-ass, where it's a woman fighting her husband who is transforming into a demon and spitting out all sorts of stuff. And basically it's like, oh, you know, I don't know why, if she throws this like snow globe, it will stop them in their tracks or whatever. So she does. And then it ends, like, this opening scene ends with the most spectacular explosion where the whole budget probably went. And you're like, whoa, that's awesome. Now what? So what happens is, her grandson is now the lead character. He goes, visits his dad in the institute, who somehow tells him he has to go back to this cabin where his grandparents died all these years ago. So he gets a bunch of friends, his girlfriend and a couple other people, and they go to this cabin. And but right before they get to the cabin, he called 2 more friends to join them. So when they get out of the car, they're magicians. And yeah.
Okay.
That helps.
Yeah, they just get out and they're magicians.
Great.
And immediately the jock of the bunch starts because I guess the main magician used to date one of the girls, and now he's with the girl's with a jock. So they get an immediate fight where the jock throws a can at the magician, and then he pops the can up he keeps kicking it up, and then he kicks it back into his head. And you're like, oh, wow. And it's like, okay. And they're about to fight or whatever. Like, no, we got to chill out or whatever. I only bring this out because the next scene, they're not in their magician clothes anymore. And there's no reason for them being a magician. The only reason I think it's there is because later when demons attack, he uses the same kick that he did on the can to knock a demon's head off.
Oh, no, it's totally the high school cliques. I mean, you've got the jocks and the magicians.
The magicians are there. The girl.
How come they weren't in the Warriors? The magicians.
Well,
The
and also,
magicians.
there's my favorite thing is there's this one of these girls are there is all right. So all right.
Wait, when does the
hold on.
wind come in?
Oh, it's coming. It's just so. I couldn't wait to talk about this movie. So then they get to the cabin, and this is actually the coolest idea of it. Is the cabin has been destroyed. So all that's left is standing is a door and like a little bit outside the door. But when they open it, the cabin is fully intact inside.
Oh, cool.
So it's almost like a little portal, like from the outside.
Beyond the gates almost kind of went for
Yeah,
that,
like you
on a
see
lower
the
budget.
door, but you're like, what the hell? So they go in, and once they go in, for some strange reason, they're like trapped in this. Like they come out when they come out the door, they can't leave this certain vicinity for some stupid reason. I wasn't really paying attention. It didn't really matter at that point.
It was the magicians.
And what's great is one of the girls keeps saying like, "Oh my God, what if we all die here? Just don't bury me here." And of course, she's the first to die and gets turned into a doll by the demons.
Whoa.
I don't understand. I don't know why.
Why?
She just becomes a doll when they catch it.
Rob, I don't understand.
Listen, all right, we're gonna moving on.
All right.
Doesn't
Can't
matter
move on,
understand.
guys.
But here's the thing. So the way that they were acting, the kids and the demons coming out and all that, like I started being like, this is Cabin in the Woods. Like this is totally like exactly like Cabin in the Woods. At least is this the movie that they and Josh is like, I don't know, maybe. And then the first time the demons come out, here comes one that looks like a farmer, like a zombie redneck. And I'm like, this is totally Cabin in the Woods. They must have used this obscure movie as kind of like, they probably saw it and are like, all right, this is where I draw the line with these stupid movies that are ripping off Evil Dead. Okay, so let me try to wrap this up. There's just so much great stuff in it. Basically, they find a book, of course, in the cabin, and 2 daggers, because Evil Dead had 1 dagger, so this one's got 2. And apparently, when you use the dagger on a demon, it disappears. So you can only use it the one time. So they use it on one demon, boom, disappears. They use it on a second demon, which is one of them that turns into a demon. And they stab him, and then he becomes his human self, and then he becomes his self at 12. Then he becomes a baby, and then he becomes a dove that flies away.
Whoa.
Oh.
Okay. And then there's a conclusion where the main guy says a spell and becomes like he looks like an alien to fight the main demon from the cover of the box. This movie is the most exciting thing that's happened to me in a long time. And
it's funny because I have one like that in a couple of minutes that I felt similar.
Really?
So it's going to be one of those good shows.
And here's the funny thing about it. So we watched it and we're like, all right, well, that was something, right? And ever since, it's been like 5 days now. Yeah. Every day, Josh texts me new GIFs, and I'm like, how does this movie have this many GIFs?
Oh, crazy!
That create like of every radical thing I just told you.
He's making them.
No, he can't. From what? From a DVD?
Oh, you go on Tumblr. They're definitely
He keeps sending
there.
me them like at random, and I'm like, how does Demon Wind have this many GIFs in the world?
I can't remember what's the name of the Lance Henriksen movie from the 80s that's got all the birds in it. It's like totally batshit and makes no sense.
Oh, yeah, The Visitor, one of my favorites.
This sounds like,
of
course, it's
a
one of your
Visitor.
favorites.
I love that. But that Visitor was kind of big budget. This looks like a kind of lower rent thing.
It is, but it still looks, because it was shot on film, it still has that appeal to it. Basically, what Beck was saying before, John Humphrey, who is our social media guy, he literally is like, he summed it up so perfect. He's like, oh, like old trauma versus new trauma.
Oh, yeah.
I'm like, oh, that's
totally
perfect. Because old trauma still looks like a real movie.
Yeah. When
Whereas
things on film,
modern stuff doesn't.
Yeah.
So, that's what it is. But
well, that's one of those VHSs at one of those swap meets I almost bought, but it was like too expensive, so I just didn't do it.
Yeah, I've seen that cover so many times, and I always like almost rented it and never did.
Greatest segue you'll ever have. I was about to say, speaking of magicians, so this was like the perfect setup. I watched Terror Train for the first time, which literally one of the main people in this film is David Copperfield.
Yes.
As a magician in this movie. This is just one of those slashers I'd never seen.
There's a musician in it as well.
Yeah, it was a question at trivia.
Yeah, I can't even remember her name now. We need Jeff Nelson.
Yeah,
here.
we do. But David Copperfield is pretty amazing and pretty sexually just something you can't take your eyes off. He just is kind of mesmerizing. I see why he's so good at magic. You just want to watch David Copperfield.
You're going to give him the yellow handkerchief.
Yeah, I will. But it's an interesting. This is just one of those few slashers. There aren't many now, I feel, that were totally under my radar at the time that you'd heard of because Jamie Lee's in it, but I just hadn't seen it. This is the Scream Factory Blu-ray. It's a lot of fun. I think the masks are really cool.
Because they change throughout.
Yeah, the killer keeps changing it. There's a little magic involved.
We actually did a poll on the website probably a year ago for which Terror Train mask was, I think, the scariest.
I
don't remember which
not the
one
Groucho
won.
Marx, but there's an old face that when Jamie Lee kind of is captured at the end, and somebody basically keeps attacking her. She's stuck in this little cage. It's pretty scary. And Roger Spottiswoode is the director of the film, and Roger Spottiswoode was also an editor for people like Peckinpah and had really a high profile. So it's not like it doesn't feel like a cheapy indie slasher. It actually feels pretty big budget on the scale that they're actually on a train. You have Ben Johnson, who's an Academy Award winning actor, as this older guy who has a lot of screen time. So it doesn't feel just like a teen slasher. I'm talking about Terror Train, Rob, which I'm sure you've seen. Right? Yeah. See, I'd never seen it. So but you missed the segue, which is magicians. Oh, David Copperfield. So going from your
pat
film,
you in the back. Here you
yeah,
go.
exactly. I was excited.
Well done, sir. Well done.
And if I haven't given it away, Rob left the room. Just like
and then came back.
Yeah, because you missed all that. Anyway, I thought it was a pretty good movie. I thought the ending led to something actually kind of exciting, but up until then, it was so-so.
Stand up, little slasher.
But now I will go to the one. Look, some people have accused me of superlatives before. especially Rob. But this movie is the best movie I've ever seen in my entire life. Night of a Thousand Cats. I had never seen Night of a Thousand Cats.
Okay.
And when I watched it, I'd been trying to see it for a couple of years, and my friend had the Code Red DVD, which Code Red Bill he pulled it off because it was on a double with some other movie that everyone complained because it was out of order. Yeah, big deal. The movie was out of order because the reels were put together wrong, and he released it, and everyone got mad at him, so he said, fuck you all, I'm pulling it, or some story like that. But Night of a Thousand Cats remained in perfect condition on this disc, and this is a movie by Rene Cardona Jr. who made Tintorera and a Guyana film. I knew it would be funny and like a holy fucking shit.
As in like the crappy shark movie?
Crappy,
okay.
I don't know.
I think it's a classic.
It's some strong shark exploitation.
This is where Tarantino took Hugo Stiglitz, the character name, because there's an actual actor, Hugo Stiglitz. And what's funny in this movie, this is a guy with a perfect beard, dark sunglasses, and basically lots of shots of him just looking cool. But what I realized halfway through this movie is they must have stolen his identity for those Heineken commercials, or is it Corona, the most interesting man in the world?
That would be...
I think it's Corona, right?
No, hold on. Guys, what is the most interesting?
Dos Equis.
Thank you.
The Dos Equis guy is exactly this Hugo Stiglitz character. Basically, every shot he's with a different scantily clad woman. But the coolest thing about this movie, it's literally a movie about a guy who just cruises around in his helicopter, and he like takes the helicopter down anytime he sees a hot girl and says, hey, come with me. He doesn't even talk. He just waves with his cool sunglasses. And they always go with him, pretty much. They go to his like, he has this weird little island castle thing that only this kind of Igor type character is waiting for him. He's very modern. He takes them inside. Hey, baby, come in here. You see literally 1,000 starving cats behind this weird fenced wall, and you're like, okay, that's pretty crazy. And then you start to realize he takes the girls there to feed him to the cats, and occasionally take their heads and put them in a glass case. This movie is 64 minutes long.
Now
and
we're talking.
It feels like 3 hours of just wonderful.
Well, Elric, I'm looking at it on Wikipedia right now.
You need to buy all the copies.
According to Wikipedia, the box office take on this movie was $350 million.
What? Wow, yeah. Well, it's probably accurate.
There's no fucking way.
in pesos. That could be. But no, this movie's like, I'm definitely not pulling your leg. This movie was, I could see how some people might not like it, but if you saw this with people, I was like, my mouth was hanging open because there's something so cool about this guy, Hugo Stiglitz, who's also one of the guys in Tentra. I can't even say it. If you can find the copy of this, I swear you should buy it. I will give you your money back. One of my goals is to collect all the copies of this. I would love to be the only person who has this movie, and you have to come to me to watch this movie. That's how special this movie was. And this is the only birthday present I received. Somebody actually gave me the copy of this movie because he got 2 when Code Red Bill pulled them. He bought 2 for that reason, and so I have this movie. So if you want to do a screening night,
well, some interesting things that I've just learned about this. It was mostly released under the name Blood Feast.
Okay.
Yeah, like that's what it's listed as.
Who wants to watch that and not
Night of a Thousand Cats? But apparently there was heavy controversy because of the cruel treatment of cats.
Whatever, there's a lot of cats. I mean, I've got 2 cats.
It wasn't like Mick Garris with Sleepwalkers back then, guys. It's an exploitation
Actually,
film.
that might be a good warning, like Cannibal Holocaust. There might be some people who can't handle it. You don't see any torture to them. The cats kind of...
Apparently
the cats get their own on the people. Let me put... Apparently
he throws a large white cat
in his defense, it is in slow motion. Okay, so the cats probably ended up fine. I don't know. Anyway, brilliant movie.
Wow,
it really made my whole trip. Wow. I mean, I'm in New York City, but I'm at somebody's house watching that, going, "This made my trip." Like that was it for me. And I've heard there's a longer version, and like on YouTube where there's like 20 minutes put back. You don't want those 20 minutes. You want the mean
64 minutes.
I think that explains how he gets all the talks to them. You don't want that. You just want a guy with a helicopter picking up ladies.
All right,
it's kind of special.
Oh my god.
And then let me just wrap you the 2 I saw Tribeca because that was while I was there. I saw Ben Wheatley's Free Fire, not really horror, so I'm not going to talk too much. I will just say
it's really good though.
It's brilliant for the first 45 minutes might be my favorite movie of the year, and it's just hard to maintain, man. It's like the whole movie is a gunfight. The whole concept is to keep the 2-hour movie or a 90-minute movie, and it's just one orchestrated gun battle, and it's just this is a movie made by a guy. You know how sometimes you're like, oh, this is a guy he thought he was going to make that one movie. This is made by a guy who probably thinks he's going to make 40 more movies. He's like, I got one idea. Yeah, let's make it. And he makes this big movie. He's going to make 40 more of them. What does he give a shit? I thought it was really interesting, but it does, like, certainly by the end to me, it kind of petered out because the story isn't really there to maintain it. But in terms of characters, it's a total blast at the start. The two I saw, one I won't say much at all about, Justin Benson and Aaron Moorhead's new film is called The Endless. It's a totally engaging mind bender of a movie. It feels very much like Outer Limits would be the closest thing I could compare it to that I've seen. The problem is there is, it's just like, don't read anything about this movie. Everyone's going to ruin it for you. There's something about it that is so fun to discover for yourself that it will stop me from basically saying anything, except I really enjoyed it. I thought it was interesting. I was very hesitant because they cast themselves as the two leads.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
Okay, yeah. It's completely for a very, very, very specific reason.
Wow.
Tied to them as filmmakers and connected to basically their filmography. And that is like what the movie, it's not, these aren't twists that will like ruin the movie, but it's a nice thing to discover. But I have no idea if you hadn't like watched any of their films, how this film will play. I think I saw somebody from Blumhouse was there and they hadn't seen anything and really enjoyed it. But for me, it felt so tied into what they do.
Oh, was Olivia there?
Yeah, I think that's who it was. Yeah, they came up to me after. Really interesting movie though, so I think it like builds on the idea that these guys. I mean, Spring's still to me the best movie. Like, it just stands alone as such an interesting, evocative movie.
I love Resolution.
But and I think Resolution plays into this. It's just their ideas are so great, and they're still being super independent with their ideas. But the film for me, that it's going to be one of my favorites of the year. But it's hard. You might find it hard to believe because these are written by friends of mine, but they made the film Siren. This movie couldn't be any more different than Siren. This is like 180 degrees different film called Super Dark Times. A guy I went to film school with was the director, Ben Collins and Luke Petrowski, who I've talked about before on the show, and hopefully we'll get guests. Yeah. Luke, from Trivia. He's my neighbor. They told me years ago, they've had like 4 movies made now. Stephanie is going to be the Blumhouse one opening Overlook Fest. They wrote that. They told me a long time ago, this is the movie that you're going to like. They always go, this is the one Elric's going to like. They were really nervous that I wasn't going to like this before. And I even said to them, hey, if you don't see me after, I'm running because I don't want that pressure. It was the first screening of my whole life, I swear to God, where I saw something that my friends had made that I walked out of theater feeling more inspired than I've ever felt, more excited for them. The voices of you're going to love it, I think, Rob, because it's basically Stand By Me in a slightly grittier, more darker version of Stand By Me. And the voices are so real to teenagers. I couldn't even believe it. It's just hilarious. Wow. It's Stranger Things too. It's like 4 years later, Stranger Things, like because it's kids on bikes, hanging out, and then something bad happens, and it's what happens after the bad thing happens. They're all dealing with trying to kind of cover up how it affects their lives in very different ways. But really, it's about being a young male teenager, and the way they've written these character voices it's really special. It's the first film I felt that way since when I saw February in a theater, and in terms of a spell being cast, and I'm in the movie. I'm just totally there, and I say that with the caveat that I know these guys, but I didn't feel that way as certain other films. I even told them after Siren, I was like, yeah, it's pretty good. I like it. It's fun, but it's not my kind of movie. Mm-hmm. This is totally my kind, but I actually, for some reason, think you'll particularly enjoy it because of the age, and it's set in the 90s. So it's kind of fun.
I'm in.
Yeah, it's Bill Clinton's 90s. On TV. There's some old bad porn they're stealing from the next door neighbor's HBO and a bad satellite,
Yeah.
But this is a movie to really keep your eyes on. I think it's going to probably be, it's The Orchard bought it.
Oh, nice.
I think it might be an October release. It's, fringe horror, thriller, dark film. I know I saw a lot. That's 10 films I saw this week while I was away.
Good God.
But Tribeca is a very kind of a button-up kind of film. Not necessarily my kind of film festival, if you know what I mean. It's a little too urban and chic. It's not like going to South by where you have an experience as a viewer. I'm sure if you're a filmmaker, you're getting a great experience. But it was just like going to the movies in New York City. But it was still cool. And thanks to Matt Barone, again, he hosted both the Q&As and listens to our show. Nice. I had a great time. And yeah, look out for those movies.
I will fly through the last few, but I definitely want to talk about the book I read. So I've mentioned The Magicians. We're back to Magicians.
Oh, God. Wow.
The TV show that I was watching because it was streaming on Netflix. Well, I got so addicted to it that I'm now on the 2nd season, which I broke down and paid for because I couldn't handle having to wait for it to come to Netflix. Still absolutely loving the show. And I know after I talked about it, a couple people messaged me on Twitter like, right? No one is watching this that I can talk about with it. It is so good. So I highly recommend checking out The Magicians. The 1st season is streaming on Netflix now. I wrote this down just to tell you, Elric, before one of the movies I saw this week, I don't remember which one it was, there was a big trailer for the re-release of Stalker. which they are doing a theatrical run for. So you and I have to go see it, because even just the trailer, when they were showing some of the scenes
gorgeous.
up on the screen, it just looked absolutely amazing.
I wonder who's putting, I mean, I know Criterion's putting out the disc. I wonder who's putting it in theaters.
I can't remember who. I saw a couple of different things this week because I was doing some press screenings, and everything from like Boss Baby to, I don't think it was before Boss Baby.
Probably wasn't before Boss Baby.
I don't think it was before, but it may have been before the Transfiguration, now that I'm thinking about it, because I remember a bunch of art things. I think maybe Kino Lorber, I want to guess. Could be. Maybe. I'll have to look that up. But yeah, so Stalker's coming back. So I just had to plug that one for you. But the big one that I wanted to talk about was, last week I had read, and again, I'm going to chew these pronunciations, Goyo, Gyo, which is the Junji Ito novel about fish that kind of just start walking on land one day. When we were talking about it last week, Ryan was like, oh yeah, I really want to read his book, Dissolving Classroom. And as soon as Ryan showed me a couple of pictures from it on his phone, I was like, I want to read this too. So literally the next morning I ordered it. It was Amazon Prime. I had it like the next day, and I read the entire thing. This book is fucking nuts.
It's backwards.
Well, it's manga. It's going to be backwards. But yeah, it's an anthology in that it's kind of broken up into chapters, and each one is kind of about the same siblings, but it goes through different towns that they're forced to move to. So it's a brother and little sister, and the little sister is possessed by a snake and eats brains. The brother worships the devil, and somehow through apologizing, he brings about the devil's power and causes people's brains to melt out their nose. Now, at first, it seems like you just have a cold where you're like, I'm sniffly. What's all this junk coming out of my nose? But then you start losing your mind, and everything melts, and then your whole body melts, and it gets gruesome.
cool.
And I was a really big fan of Spiral, just because Spiral was so surreal and macabre and kind of twisted. This is just like straight up like splatstick. It's definitely fun, and the art is really gruesome. So yeah, Dissolving Classroom, if you're into kind of like gory, weird, surreal, like it's not scary, it's just kind of like straight up like weird and gory.
Yeah, I've seen that cover image all over online.
Yeah, it's all over.
That's not one of the ones that was sent to us by a listener?
No,
No.
I
Okay.
picked that up.
I forgot
so.
to bring those books.
Yeah,
that makes
and so once I started posting that I'd finished Goyo and I just finished Dissolving Classroom, a couple people sent me some other of his books that I have to check out. So I'm just going to kind of work my way through everything now.
Looks
Very
like
cool.
Screaming Mad George.
It
Drawing
feels
something
like
up.
it. It really does have like a society feel to it. But at the same time, it's really gruesome but fun.
Cool. Well, the last thing I wanted to mention was a double feature I caught at the New Beverly. Really excited about this. They showed The Abominable Dr. Phibes,
Yeah.
which
Oh,
is
yeah.
probably one of my favorites with Vincent Price, paired up with The House That Dripped Blood. And that's cool because we had Darren Scott on to talk anthologies a few weeks back. And that was an anthology he brought up that I had not seen. And just proving that we are in a Matrix-like world. 2 days later, they announced they're showing it at the New Bev. So I'm like, oh, I have to go see it. So this was a great double bill. I mean, I've always loved Dr. Phibes. They had a beautiful 35 millimeter print of it. And to see it with an audience, it's really for the time period. It's 1971. It's pretty graphic. I mean, it's a revenge story, obviously. It's like he's this deformed doctor who lost his wife, and he blames several surgeons for being responsible for the death of his wife. So then in very intricate ways, using some sort of, I don't know, Egyptian sort of curse
Isn't
deal.
it the plague?
Yeah, he's
Yeah,
using the
it's-
he's
plague,
using the plague.
He's using the plagues
Locusts,
to and it was funny because my friend Blake Riegel was there and he came up to me, he's like, oh man, I liked it. He's like, I didn't know this was a Saw movie. And I'm like, pretty much.
Yeah.
It's pretty much Jigsaw. But it's a beautiful movie and I still love it. And House of Drip Blood was really good too. It was written by Robert Bloch, who obviously
That's right,
wrote
yeah.
Psycho. I didn't realize that he'd done quite a couple of these. This
Yeah,
and
he had done a
Asylum as
couple,
well. But this was a lot of fun. It was, I think, technically 4 skits, although I guess the fourth was the, kind of the wraparound as they do turns into the fourth one, which I really love. And it's basically a detective gets called in a town because of these weird occurrences at this house. So it's like the house that, is the culprit behind these messed up things that happen there. And I really love the first skit, which was kind of about an author that was writing about a strangler. And then the strangler kind of comes to life. He keeps seeing him around the house. And then he's like nervous that he's going to kill his wife and stuff. But what's fun about this, and I don't want to give him away because it's just fun to watch it this way, is it almost, and it was funny to watch with an audience. So the second skit, the lead of it is Peter Cushing. So he like walks into frame, everyone starts cheering. Then that skit ends, Christopher Lee walks into frame. And you're like, oh, all right, he's the lead of this one. So you get all these like icons. And then I think it was the fourth skit that's I forget the name of the guy, but it's an actor who is playing a vampire in something. And he's like, he's like mocking Hollywood, and he's like, nothing's like the classics. Frankenstein, the Wolfman, Dracula, Bela Lugosi, of course, not that other guy. And that got the biggest laugh because obviously we'd just seen Christopher Lee 5 minutes ago in the previous skit. So
is this the one with the posters, Peter Cushing's head on the platter?
Yes, that's the one.
I've got
so
the
it's pretty good. It's not one of the best anthologies I saw, but there was that first skit really stood out a lot to me, and I thought it was really cool. And that was definitely the way to see it. And I, like you in New York, a gentleman named Perry came up and said hello to me. He was a listener of the show, which I thought was really sweet. So it was a good way to watch movies with like-minded souls, if you will.
Yeah, it's pretty good. Yeah, Five. You know what? I got to revisit the sequel to that because I have not seen that for
again.
a long time.
I remember liking that one a lot.
Which one? Five?
Five Rides. There's
again.
a sequel. That it doesn't have Cotton. Joseph Cotton's in the first one, right? He's the detective.
In
the first
but
one.
it's still Vincent Price.
It might be Peter Cushing in the sequel, who's the other lead. I can't recall, but I haven't seen that for a long time. And I think it's the same director. We should watch that.
I remember it being slightly gorier than the first one.
Yeah, because, all right. We had the writer of the first one. No, it was the same director who did both.
Scroll down and there's Cushing in it?
Of which one?
This one.
Five Rides
Cushing
Again.
in the second?
Robert Quarry, and Peter Cushing. You're right.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's one.
Yeah.
I got to revisit that one.
Yeah, I want to re-see that one too.
First one's just beautiful. It's a beautiful looking movie.
Yeah, it really is.
And
smart.
I remember it being poetic and smart, like it actually being kind of a touching story.
Well, because he's a good villain, because it's out for revenge and he has a good reason, and it's
very much
easy
so.
to cheer for that kind of character, And Price is best when he gets to just go.
Yeah.
Well, you know what? The thing that impressed me most about it, and I mean, this isn't a spoiler, but he doesn't speak for at least 25 minutes, and then when he does speak, it's something off because I don't want to reveal it, but he uses a little mic thing on on the side. But that's the thing, is the acting he does the whole movie without physically speaking is just amazing. You can tell
it's almost like he's better with the limitation.
He's great that way. So
it's very cool.
So that was that. Was there anything else you saw, Becca?
Nope, I'm good.
All right,
so just a couple movies.
Just a couple.
Just a couple.
That's what happens when we miss a week, or one of us misses a week.
Yeah. So we're going to take a quick break in here from our sponsor, and then we're going to bring a guest on. And this is very exciting. Somebody that I've always wanted to have on the show because I've worked with him quite a lot over the years. And for a lot of you, I know how much you love the kind of the behind the scenes on the Blu-ray companies, like when we have Scream Factory or Twilight Time or any of these people on. As of this listening, you will see a photo that I'm going to post on the group the day before of just 90% of the titles this guy has worked on. But
and even bigger than that, he is the most consistent customer of Jump Cut Cafe. like literally the person keeping me alive at the end.
So we're going to be back with Unsung hero Jim Kunz in just a minute.
Today's sponsor is Shudder, the premium streaming video service devoted to horror, thrillers, and suspense. Backed by AMC Networks, Shudder has a growing and dynamic selection of thrilling premieres, originals, and exclusives, including Rob Zombie's 31, The Ring vs. The Grudge franchise matchup, Sadako vs. Kyako, and We Are the Flesh. Shudder is also the only place to find legendary BBC film Ghostwatch, now available in the USA for the first time ever. Shudder is available on the web, ISO, Android, Chromecast, Apple TV, and Roku for $4.99 a month or $49.99 for an annual membership. But Shockwave listeners can get a free month by entering the promo code SHOCK at checkout. Go to Shudder.com today and find the best collection of horror available to stream anywhere.
All right, and we are back with our very, 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 very special guest. Just because I want to make him feel comfortable.
He's done so much. I mean, like...
This is the thing. You guys...
But we also like him.
We do like him. We do like him a lot. You guys, you actually know and have seen so much of this guy's work because he's worked on so many titles that we've mentioned and that you've bought, on top of a lot of other cool stuff like working with Elvira and making films in his own right. So we are thrilled to have Mr. Jim Kunz in the studio.
Jim Kunz!
Jim.
Happy to be here. Thank you.
All righty.
So, ma'am,
I was worried my voice was going to be a little too high. It's kind
I
of
think you're
falling out right
fine.
now.
That was an in-between joke.
yes,
And
that's
while
right.
I'm sitting here, I mean, like, we just got done talking about the brain damage Blu-ray coming up, and I'm seeing you worked on that.
Yes.
You did a couple of the different segments on that, animating Elmer and the listening to light. The
What have
making
you
of
not
brain
worked
damage.
on? That's
Yeah.
probably the easier way to
Here,
go.
let me just, let's get it out of the way. I don't really work with Synapse that much, although I have on a few of the things through Michael Felsher's Red Shirt Pictures, and I don't really do anything with Twilight Time.
Right.
Although I
They
love
don't really
the
do features.
Is that what it is? I've never even bought one. Everyone's just like, I know they do a limited amount, and then it's like $60 or something crazy.
Yes.
Is that, I'm
It's
talking
not
out of
60.
class.
It's usually
It's
it
about
retails
40.
for 30.
And they don't do a lot of horror.
$29.99.
Yeah.
They don't really do horror.
Not
and
that
it's
many, so.
very limited, which is why people immediately jack them and put them on eBay for double the price. But
Yeah.
Maybe that's it.
the
I'm not
difference,
here to
yes.
give any kind of factual information whatsoever. Let's get that out of the way right now.
Well, you know, Jim, we have a Twilight Time episode that explains everything.
Yeah,
You should listen to.
it's on our Killer POV.
We're going to advertise that
rundown.
for the next episode.
Yeah. So, how did you? Well, do we want to go back to the beginning? I was going to say, how did you get started doing features? But we should go back further, shouldn't we?
God, where do we start?
Little Jim.
All the
Here's
way
the
there.
Tell us
thing,
about
yeah.
Little Jim.
No,
Kunz.
actually, I don't want to hear about Little Jim.
Actually, no, it's good. I worked in a liquor store when I was in 4th grade, and I had like a
What?
357 waved in my. I grew up in South Pasadena over here.
Wait, South Pass was like hardcore at the time.
No, not at all. There's a little place called Foremost Liquor. It was like down the street. I lived on Monterey Road, and I just started hanging out there. I was a latchkey kid. My mom was always out running around doing whatever, and my brother didn't care. He was older than me, so I would just hang out. They would give me money, and I learned, like, we would tap the phones outside. I learned all about life through, like, working at this liquor store. And then it got robbed, and my mom got weirded out, but she didn't care that I went back the next night. It was, if you really want to go back that far, it has nothing to do with anything, but it's, I don't know.
That's crazy. I'm still just trying to picture like liquor store in South Pasadena because it seems very like pristine and clean to me. South Pass is really nice for those who don't live in LA.
It is really
But you're
nice.
talking about being like a 10-year-old?
However old I was, I don't know. I would just hang out there, and eventually, like, well, let's just give this little shit won't leave. Let's give him, here's $20, go stock the cooler. We don't want to do it. And I would do it. And eventually I would just hang out there, and I would leave with money. And then I would go to grade school. Like, what do you do when you get money when you're a kid? I would
Malt
better
liquor.
but I would buy all the now and laters and bring them to school and try to buy, because I was even weird. I never really had a lot of friends. So it's like, oh, I'll buy my friends. I have stuff. It was misfired from the
Did
start.
you sell the Nowlanders in high school?
No, I would give them out. I would literally
okay.
skip through the hall throwing candy on my backpack, like just some little candy fairy. Like,
Because
running
that,
around.
by the way, that was a big market in my high school. Is kids would buy like the God, what are those long Sour Patch like the strings or whatever? They go and buy them and then sell them for like buy them for 5 cents and sell them for a quarter at school. There's like a big ring of like we didn't have drugs, we were doing candy.
Jim didn't have that
guys-
business acumen. He's just handing out for
But
free.
here's the thing, and this may be
Have vending machines?
no,
Oh, wow.
Not at ours,
Oh, not in
No,
South
of
Pass.
course
no.
not. No, but a common thread that will run through all of this is that one of the reasons I am, and each of you know me in a different
different
capacity
way.
already, I'm not motivated by money, and I never have been.
Never.
It's always been very easy for me to make money and get myself to be needed through technology or whatever skill set I've learned, and I've just never been motivated by that. I've realized very early on that, like, people like stuff. And it's, if you do things for people, they're going to like you, and they're going to be nice to you, and they're going to need you. So that's always been kind of my motto, is make people need me.
Right.
And that's where, if you want to go back to where it started, that's how it was with William Lustig. I got started with Blue Underground, and he needed a new website, and I was doing internet stuff. I don't know if I'm jumping all over the place, but
No, you're doing
Well, yeah,
fine.
let's start there because I mean, did you always have? Because that's the thing is like you are kind of a jack of all trades for lack of a better term, and a one man machine. Like when you show up to shoot this stuff, you know every aspect of production pretty much, and how to get this stuff done quickly, cheaply, and efficiently. And it all starts from kind of web design, like at least, as you were about to say. So did you always have, what was that about you that you were always on top of the web before things became necessary? Like you were doing web design before people needed websites.
Yeah, but it was even before that. Because I was DJing, I was doing like mixing, like raves with like record and playing techno. I was obsessed with it. And so I did that in the early 90s, but I quickly saw like, this is a loser route. Like I would talk to the people I was with, like, what do you guys want to be doing in 10 years? And they're like, bro, throwing the sickest parties. I'm like, no, you're going to be doing weddings and shit. It's not going to really go the way you plan. But I learned, I liked the mechanics, like the board we're looking at right here and all that. I loved that. I loved the technology. I loved knobs and dials and analog. So I got in, I saw the internet forming. And I was like, this is what I want. So I got rid of all the DJ stuff. I sold it. I bought a little Mac Plus back in the day, and I just like obviously bought the wrong machine. But I learned quickly about hardware, the internet technology. I went and got certified with Microsoft for networking. I think it's called like a Microsoft Certified System Engineer. And I would do that. This is so boring for anyone listening.
No.
It's okay. It's going to become cool.
I just said Microsoft Certified System Engineer on your horror podcast. Like, yeah,
but Halt and Catch Fire is very popular. So some of these TV shows about nerdy shit works.
But anyway, it was that. I learned very early on, like, how to do networking and how it would work. I worked with places like airline companies and learned how to connect to the airline servers to the tickets. It's all done very easily now, but back then it was specific hardware boxes and specialty, and I got really into that. And I got bored very fast with that, too, because it's boring. You go to someone's office, you set everything up and make it work, and then you're not doing anything because it all works. And so well, she can now print from Word, and this person can do that. And so I just eventually, design looks fun, and the internet's forming, and pages don't have to look ugly. I don't remember what, Yahoo and all that looked like back in the day, but it was awful.
Yeah.
Programmers cannot design. And so I learned programming and design because I saw that's what's missing. Designers don't know anything about code and this and that, so I would do that. Mix it around. Hopefully you can edit this. Cut all this down.
No, but it's all on
well, what's interesting, but I don't have that at all. They're like, thing about wanting to touch technology.
Well, that's
and
and the reason I wanted to bring this up is because it plays into your work ethic that I've learned over the years. Is that, I mean, Jim is the tech guy. If you have any fucking issue with anything, whether it's a computer, shooting, editing, whatever, you can call him and he'll get back to you right away, solve it, and I'll be like, how did you do that? I was like, I just Googled it and figured it out.
Immediately.
Like, how?
I have asked him so many questions about codecs. I've asked you about DCPs before when I was struggling to get one of those made, and then it was dropping frames. Shit that I for lack of a better, I don't care about. I love making films and I love the product, but when it's my DCP is dropping frames, I'm like, I don't care, just make it work. Why won't it work?
But see, most people would be boring in that context, and you're not boring. And also, but you're also a horror fan before all of this, from a young age. So I want to touch on that before, and then connect it to the technology, because it feels like these two streams are going to collide in a very interesting way.
They are.
Take us back horror early.
Because just to jump forward, as of now, I'm the technical director for a lot of the Blue Underground, Severin Films, Grindhouse Releasing.
My favorite of all, Grindhouse Releasing. Love those.
And again, it's we kind of exhausted his library.
Right. No, I know.
A couple more coming up, but it's that's Murawski.
That could be it. The collection. Yeah.
We spent 9 months making pieces. You know what I mean?
That's amount such a Murawski thing,
right? Yeah. But again, it's like a disc of the year for some of these things.
Beyond Beyond disc is
amazing.
Next level.
Yep.
I mean, yeah.
And then we did the Duke Mitchell movies. Nobody cared. Those got so much love.
I got the poster up in my living room.
I love that you have that.
I hung a painting of it in Jump Cut for 2 years, and it's still my favorite. The thing I miss most.
Yeah.
But when it came time for all the top 10 lists, I was like, finally, the Duke Mitchell. It was a lost film, Gone with the Pope. Nobody cared. And I was just like, man. But I worked on all the others, so
I think Gone with the Pope will still have its day. I feel like it's going to happen. It's such a special movie.
Anyway, again, I'm all over the place. You guys
but that's fine, because I think we're all kind of a little bit like that. And we looked at, there was an email that went around of all the things you've done just to catch us up. And I remember you ended it in a way that actually I thought was pretty poignant to the three of us, which is, you do this for cinema, you do this for not to make money, and you said something like, and you guys know what that is, because you're all doing the same thing. We've been doing a podcast for 4 years. We're not doing this for money. We don't do it. We do this out of a fucking passion to talk about this stuff, to share it, to indulge it, and to still live as young people, as kids who first fell in love with something. But I just want to know, because in that same email you were talking about, you're a horror fan from an early age. So just walk us through how that you got the bug. Do you remember the earliest horror you saw, and what got you turned on?
The one that got me the most was, it's such a dumb story. It was House by the Cemetery.
Oh yeah.
And
wow.
I lived in an apartment building in South Pasadena, and some kid and the kid that lived in the building, we said, hey, we're going to the movie. Let's go. So we went to the Highland Park 3, but they were going to see Bo Derek Bolero. And they're like, oh, these kids can't go in there. You guys go watch one of the other two. So House by the Cemetery. So we went and watched that.
Wait, House by the Cemetery was okay, but Bolero was not?
That's like Chuck Norris. Violence is fine. Do not show a tit.
Wow.
Okay.
That's crazy. I always thought House by the Cemetery was pretty extreme.
I was 6th grade when that happened. I had seen some before, but that was the one that really kind of broke me.
Because it's different, right?
It's so different. The atmosphere, I'd never seen anything like that. I've obviously had watched a lot of stuff on television, Night of the Living Dead, it creeped out. They would show it on TV, but that was the one. The atmosphere was weird. The reels were out of order, I learned later.
Well, you might not be able to tell because it's fleshy, so it's stream of conscious dream anyway.
But people die and then they come back. And so I was just like, this shit is surreal.
So it's like beyond.
Exactly, yeah. I don't, like you said, I didn't know if it was intentional or not. So that was the one. I remember I was in 6th grade and I had a creative writing class and I wrote this awful story about eyeballs getting ripped out and just I was so moved by what I saw there that they were like, you got to see the principal. Something's wrong with this child. So,
were you the same age as Bob when you saw that?
No, Bob's a little older. They're little boys. I wish that's how mine sounds.
Well, I mean, I can only imagine because, like, Night of the Living Dead's one thing, but to see something as dreamy as Fulci, it does take movies like that to really infect your mind because you don't understand it. Not understanding something is much more terrifying, especially when you're young. Your brain's trying to figure it out, like, oh, there's nudity, and then something awful happens that nudity. I don't understand. I don't like that, but I want to watch more of it. I find it interesting. There's
a real estate agent that gets a poker stuck into her. Yes. It's such a good effect.
Yeah.
And this is all great because we can talk about, I went to Rome and interviewed everybody and did the Blu-ray for it. So I got to actually,
Oh, you were part of our favorite story of all time, the Murawski Beyond the Beyond, and talking to the writer.
Yeah.
Yep. And sitting in the editing room as they were trying to, get them to do regraining, was it?
I wasn't there for that one.
Okay. Murawski spoke about how they were trying to get them to kind of, repair some of the damage that had been done to some of these films and that they were very much like, I don't have time for this. And that he was like, no, these are classic works of art.
Right. You're right.
They didn't care in Italy.
Yeah, they weren't treating it with the way it should be respected. But it's going to be hard not to jump all over because because we also, just because that is my favorite episode of Killer POV was with Bob,
Murawski.
But a lot of the stories are shared with you.
The Bill Lustig one was amazing.
Exactly, they're probably two of my favorites.
All right, so we are jumping around, but screw it.
It's my brain works that way. It's part of the problem of being as technical is I'm a fucking spaz. I mean, it's all over the place at all times. It's a programmer brain. It's a weird video. It's a horror nerd brain. It's all of these things in one. So it's
well, before we jump into the work, so House by the Cemetery, first movie that really had an impact on you. But then what about in terms of getting the filmmaking bug and learning about, because was shooting being a cinematographer the thing you went for, or was there a different aspect of filmmaking?
I set out to direct them. I was like, I can make, it was like mid-2000s. I saw I was already doing photography, After Effects, everything I lived on a computer. And I said, video's now HD. And if I get it on my machine, I can pretty much do anything with the picture. I can color correct it, I can adjust it, I can comp, I can cut someone's head off without actually doing it. You can do this stuff. And I realized that. But the movies that inspired me, The Dark Backward, Adam Rifkin's early one. I love it. Just simply, and that's one, even people that love the same movies as me, I'll loan them that DVD and they're like, this is not for me. But he made it $1 million, made it in Los Angeles. He created an entire world in the 30-mile zone, and it has atmosphere, and it's weird, and it's unique. There's something about it that I love it. Mm-hmm. And so that was one. Dead Alive, obviously, Brain Dead. I love that. That's one that inspired me. I think I like when there's a drop of blood. I mean, there's a laugh with every drop of blood. You know what I mean? Mm. Sometimes it gets a little serious and too raw, and it's hard for me to take it seriously. I don't really get scared. Yeah. And so to me, it's funny a lot of times. So that's what I like. I love Creepshow. But the ones that really inspired me and were like, I can do this. I can make that. It was kind of those types of movies. Ones that really created an atmosphere or stand out on their own. I mean, I still don't think Dead Alive has been topped. As far as just that lawnmower scene, it's so good in every way. Yeah. I was in San Diego in college watching that with a roommate, and when that ear thing happens and the girl's eating the guy's ear like in soup, he threw up. And I'm just like, that is so cool. Wow. Like this guy, we're watching art at this point to me because it really affected him. He wasn't drunk or anything. So there's a few tentpole movies that for me are really important that most people don't care about, but those are the ones that really inspired me. And after I was getting really bored, I was making a lot of money. I lived in a 7-story house in Mount Washington by myself, doing all this computer stuff. It was great, but it's just, what am I doing? I'm not happy. I still go to an office every day. I'm not that into it. I know I can do this stuff on my own. And so that's when it was 2007, January of 2007, I took a loan out from my credit union. I spent 20 grand on camera stuff and 20 grand on a big computer, like workstation, and I just set out to do it. First I worked out of my house. I would still do web design, Bill Lustig's thing, do programming, motion graphics. I did Cheech and Chong roast on Comedy Central. I would just find weird jobs and just do them.